Hello, everybody. Welcome to another DC Spotlight. It's the collaboration between Comic Boom and Comic Source, bringing you the DC books for September 12th, 2023, plus a book that comes out on Batman Day. We'll talk about it at the end. Batman Gargoyle of Gotham. Hope you had a chance to listen to my chat with Rafael Grampa from San Diego Comic Con. So we'll briefly touch on that book right at the end, and then maybe we'll talk about it more in depth next week. But that being said, a little bit of a down week for me. Nothing that really kind of blew me away. I mean, Green Lantern, which I already talked about with Jeremy Adams, was really good. We'll talk about that. Danger Street, which typically is a highlight for us, maybe a bit of a down issue there. So, not sure. Be interesting to see what a book of the week is for each of us. But we also have the
Yeah,
debut of Batman and Robin #1, which is a 6-issue miniseries from Joshua Williamson, which my understanding is the whole entire miniseries takes place during Gotham War, so that's interesting as well. And then, of course, Waller versus Wildstorm, which is a super political book, and again, another one of these, especially a book like this, um, that's so in depth and so political, and so thus a little bit complicated. For it to have the delay from Night Terrors, like, oh my god, I was for the first
yeah,
4 or 5 pages, I was so lost. And it's not a book that I want to go back and reread the previous two to remember what the hell was going on because it's so
exactly.
dense and there's so many moving parts. It's confusing enough already. I don't know. Bad form DC. Like that's one that probably shouldn't have been delayed, and maybe it wasn't supposed to be, and it's only just delayed from normal delays and not Night Terrors. But anyway, what were your thoughts on the week overall, Rocky?
Uh, uh, Overall, I was pleasantly surprised. I enjoyed getting Jeremy Adams back, Green Lantern back on track. I enjoyed reading that. I thought and I actually enjoyed Batman and Robin probably a little bit more than you did. And I really like Batman Gargoyle of Gotham, but that is for Batman Day. We won't be giving any spoilers for that because it comes out, as you said, on Batman Day, September, I think, 16th. And but the rest, yeah, it was a little bit disappointing, and part of it had to do with my struggle to remember what had happened because of the Night Terror break, which you and I both vented our frustrations about that. But beyond that, and the other, I mean, Batman Incorporated, the ending of Batman Incorporated was, I mean, you and I pretty much predicted it, and I'm sure lots of other people did too. So that was because. I don't know. I felt disappointed that it was so easy to sort of predict the outcome of that, but we'll get into it, and maybe you and I will be good for a good rant or two. So
Yeah, usually we are good for a good rant or two. The other thing, we'll talk about when we get there. Let's kick it off with Batman and Robin #1. As I mentioned, written by Joshua Williamson. The art here is by Simone DeMeo. Letters by Steve Wands. As always, many covers when it comes to a #1 from DC, and from Marvel for that matter. I gotta mention the Art Germ cover with White Rabbit, which, yeah, I mean, it's just gorgeous. It's just gorgeous, right? It's just gorgeous. She looks fantastic.
yeah, she
Maybe a little waifu, what have you. But I, I'll go ahead and go first. You mentioned you probably like it better than me, and that's probably the case. So here's the thing that kind of kept taking me out of the story: the interaction between Bruce Wayne and Damian when they're talking to each other, just supposed everyday life kind of thing. A little bit when they're in the costume, but more when not. More when they're just kind of at the brownstone and talking whatever. It just felt so cringy to me. It's not any sort of dialogue or interaction or um, like the way they speak to each other. Just so out of left field. Never seen it before. Granted, I haven't read every single Batman Damian Wayne comic that there is, um, but this didn't sound like any sort of way that they would speak to each other that I've ever read before. And it just, I mean, this whole idea of Damian kind of being the parent, almost like being the parent, right? Didn't you ever listen to Alfred? Can't you make your own, breakfast or make your own tea properly or whatever? It felt so cringy. Um, it, it yeah, it just didn't play well for me. The action scenes, like I said, were a little better. But as much as I'm a fan of Simone DeMeo and the right book, I just didn't care for the art in this particular book. It felt a little chaotic. There are times where I found myself like having to really concentrate on the art and look around and say, okay, what is that I'm looking at? Oh, it's a Zeppelin from far away, and I'm looking up at it. Okay, got it. And I also feel like the color, like I don't understand these color choices. Everything is sort of pastelish, muted, sort of like a lot of pinks and blues, but all sort of muted. And so I don't know. It made the art feel a little bit muddy to me. So I was a little disappointed in this. It wasn't terrible, and it got better toward the end with the fight between Killer Croc and was it Orko was another one that was there, and
Yeah.
I wasn't sure why Man Bat was a villain again. That was a little confusing, but neither here nor there, I guess. And with Batman being shot with something where he's attracting bats, that's kind of interesting. We'll see how that plays out. But overall, yeah, it was a disappointment. And coming off Williamson's run on Damian, his voice, like his tone, the way Damian holds himself and acts and talks in that Robin series that had art by Gleb Melnikoff and Roger Cruz, which was fantastic. That Damian feels like a completely different Damian than this Damian. This Damian's voice is kind of pretentious and, like I said, condescending to his father. It feels like a totally different character. I don't know. I was taken aback by the characterization of Damian and Bruce in this. So for me, this was a bit of a miss. What do you think?
Well, if first of all, I need to psychologically, I need to forget that Gotham War is going on, because we have to remember that this takes place in the middle of Gotham War. And while I actually like this Batman, I didn't mind this issue. I'm more positive about it than you are. This was Bruce Wayne trying to be more of a father figure to Damian. And we're not used to seeing that, where he's actually trying to be a better father. He even enrolled Damian in school in this issue, and he's trying to play the role that Alfred normally played, and he's uncomfortable with it, and Damian is uncomfortable even interacting with his father, sort of playing that role, and it's quite clear that both father and son here are a little bit uncomfortable, sort of communicating with each other, but Bruce tells Damian, look, we're moving into we got a new place now. It's not Wayne Manor, obviously, because they're kicked out of Wayne Manor. We know that Vandal Savage owns Wayne Manor now from Gotham War. And this is Bruce trying to relate to Damian in the midst of Gotham War. What sort of struck me is, remember that this is why I got a disconnect from Gotham War, because the barrage of the different plot points of Gotham, or one of them is that the other members of the Bat family think that Bruce Wayne Batman's lost it. He's possessed, of Batman of Zurana, and Batman's losing it, and he's almost gone insane, and they got to stop him. Well, this is the most sane I've ever seen Batman ever. This is the most sane Bruce Wayne I've ever seen. I've never seen Bruce Wayne more sane than in this opening issue, and the rest. And this is out of sync with the rest of Gotham War. And because you and I mean, in order to make Gotham War work, you and I really went at it in terms of our opinions, but we can both agree that in order to make Gotham War work, it would make more sense that maybe Batman is a little bit on edge and he's maybe pushing the envelope, being overly aggressive. And that's out of sync with this Batman and Robin issue 1, which other than out of sync with Gotham War, I'm more forgiving of the dialogue and the character as you are, but it still makes you think. And it even, now, more problematic, maybe, depending on how you view Gotham War, and not to drudge that up, but the White Rabbit is the villain here, and, I guess she's one of the villains that doesn't seem to be affected by what Selina is doing, and there's still crime. Even Damian mentions that not all crime was affected by what Selina is doing, which is more in sync with your interpretation of Gotham War. So that seems to be the correct interpretation, or at least what Zardasky and Tini Howard are probably trying to do. So, Williamson is trying to fit this into that. And if I just sort of relax my brain and try not to synchronize it, I enjoy this opening issue more, but I suspect that more people will feel like you did than me.
Yeah, I like it a little less now, even than I did. With you mentioning that, I totally had spaced over that. I don't know why I didn't realize. You're right. We've only seen in the pages of Gotham War, which I think I've read the first 3 issues. Because I've already read next week's Catwoman. So I've read the first 3 parts. We've only seen Batman in the cowl. We haven't seen him as Bruce Wayne. He's only been in the cowl, with the exception of, I think, the first panel we see him where he's getting up out of the bed after being asleep for 8 weeks. Um, and yeah, he is on edge. He is traumatized. He is on the verge of one could argue, has already gone over the edge. But it's about losing control, right? He's no longer in control. And you're right. This is a very sane Bruce Wayne and dealing with Damian and wanting him to go to school and what have you. So yeah, that is a completely different characterization for Bruce. So yeah, I don't know. We got to blame that on editorial, to be honest.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on. Batman Incorporated number 12, the final issue. I don't know why there's no credits anywhere in the book. So grabbing them from elsewhere. We know it's written by Ed Brisson, art by John Timms, colors by Rex Locust, letters by Clayton Cowles. I enjoyed this. I kind of, for the exact reason I didn't care for Batman and Robin number 1. The interaction between this big cast, where I feel, I mean, we're 12 issues in. I feel like I'm finally getting a kind of a handle on who's who and the way they act, kind of a little bit of expectations of the way I expect them to act, whether it's the Knight or whomever, even Ghostmaker here kind of does what you sort of have. I've been, without realizing it when he does it, I sort of have been waiting for this moment with Ghostmaker where he just kind of throws his hands up and says, I can't lead Batman Incorporated. This is not for me. Leave me the hell alone. Stay out of my way. I can't follow Batman's rules. I think they're stupid. This not killing rule and whatever. And with all the fallout between the Joker Incorporated and all the people that were killed, and from Ghostmaker's perspective, he's like, yeah, if you would let me do things the way I want to do them, or I think they should be done, then these innocent people wouldn't have been killed, because I would have got rid of the Joker a long time ago. This makes a lot of sense.
It does. It does.
And it's not anything that's hasn't been said about Batman before. And it is interesting. There's such a stigma with superheroes killing, right? I'm a little more willing to accept it with Batman than I am with Superman. As long as Batman's not using guns. He'll never use a gun. And I feel like Batman's a little more, I'm not going to push you off the roof, but I'm also not going to reach my hand down to help you if you're slipping. But that's a little bit more of, I don't know, Batman from, what would we say? God, I was going to say 60 years ago, but longer than that, right? Like Batman when he first showed up, the Batman of the 30s and 40s. It's a little different, but in more recent time, maybe it has to do with the way society looks at our fictions, and worried about influencing children in the wrong way and what have you. Where we say, yeah, we don't want Batman, who's certainly a role model these days, to be willing to kill, right? So you can kind of understand where the powers that be are coming from at DC, but in my mind, it makes a little bit. It's problematic, right? Especially when you talk about different versions of Batman, whether it be Christopher Nolan or Zack Snyder or whomever. But in terms of this, we can only judge this on its merits and who Batman is right now in the comics, and who that is somebody who doesn't condone killing, and somewhat arrogantly says, hey, we're going to find a better way. We can always find a better way. And you could argue whether that's some power creep on the part of Batman or not, or the writers. But this is what we have to work with, and so as I said, it's not surprising that Ghostmaker takes this route. Maybe the more surprising thing is how long it took him to get there. So I did enjoy this, but at the same time, it does feel a little bit like it feels a little rushed, for lack of a better term. I don't know if this was always planned on being a 12 issue mini, but it did feel the resolution felt a little bit convenient, but at the same time, it was also really fun. What I liked about it most, while maybe being a little bit of a situation where, okay, so they disable the bombs that are implanted in these, or some, they're not all bombs. Some are, I guess they're all bombs, but some are gas, some are actually explosives. But regardless of whatever booby trap it is that's been implanted surgically in these different members of Joker Incorporated, they're all going to be activated by a radio signal. Joker's going to hit a button and it's going to send a signal, and whatever it is going to go off. So it makes sense that they could all be disabled with an electromagnetic pulse, an EMP. It feels a little ex Deus Machina, to be honest, but it does make sense. But then there's also part of it where it's like, if you guys are so smart, how come you didn't figure this out sooner? But then there's also, because they are so smart, and the thing I loved about it the most is that once it's figured out and relayed to members of Batman Incorporated, they're, in all their pairs, there's always one of the pair that's like, oh, I can build an EMP. Yeah, just give me 30 seconds. And let me grab a hairdryer and a stick of gum and a paper clip, and I'll MacGyver this thing together. Yeah. That's the most comic book thing ever, right? And it's just fun. It's just fun that they hey, just keep these henchmen off me for a couple minutes, and I'll build an EMP, and then it works, and the day is saved, and what have you. So it's a lot of fun. But yeah, I'm gonna miss this series. The art from John Timms really got better with each issue. I loved Ed Brisson's characterization, mostly for the interaction between the characters. And in my mind, it feels like it's just getting started. You take sort of the biggest ego off the page, off the team, with Ghostmaker having left. And now I want to see where it goes. Who steps in to fill the void of leadership? What would their next challenge be? What would their next mission be? So again, I don't know if it was always planned on 12 issues. Hopefully it'll come back. I guess maybe you need Gotham more to play out. There are rumors that Batman's going to be missing after Gotham War. There will be no Bruce Wayne Batman. So I don't know, but I heard those rumors, and I'm like, well, now in hindsight, are they? Bruce Wayne's not going to be around. Is that the 2 months that we already kind of glossed over? Is that the 8 weeks when he was asleep? Or is there more, hey, we're not going to have Bruce Wayne for a while? So who knows? Maybe what would be cool and interesting and different, and honestly, I don't see DC doing this because they'd be worried about it hurting sales, is for Batman not to even be in the Batman book, for Bruce Wayne not to even be in the Batman book for 2 months, and just have turned it into a Batman Incorporated book. Different. You can do solo stories with these members. You could do you can keep it as is, where you're telling team stories. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But again, I have a feeling DC would worry about sales. But anyway, what were your thoughts on this? I know you said it a little bit of a letdown as it's ending here. So,
but I admit it's a letdown, but then I ask myself, well, what was I expecting? And the fact is, I was hoping for a little bit more of a controversial ending. I was hoping more that instead of Ghostmaker just leaving, there should be a consequence. And really, if ever there was a time when Batman should show up at the end, Batman should have showed up at the end and kicked Ghostmaker out, not Ghostmaker just leaving. I think that would have been more. That would have highlighted the more of the drama, and but that's a minor nitpick. I don't mean to play script doctor, but I just did. Whatever. Dark Ranger ends up. Dark Ranger is not dead. It appears at the end. We thought he'd been killed. He's not. So Dark Ranger at the end of this issue, at the end of this series, is healing. Gyro is going to spend more time with his dad. Clown Hunter leaves the team, and the primary core team members left are the Knight, Grey Wolf, Night Runner, and the Batman of China, with Dark Ranger and Gyro probably, coming back after they do whatever it is they need to do. The issue ends with them apprehending Die Laughing, who was the one member of Joker Incorporated that provided necessary information to Knight and Grey Wolf to at least to provide to them the device that they tried to figure out. Ultimately, led to them figuring out to use an electromagnetic pulse to disable the device. I uh, I I would have liked to have seen more members die. Yes, I wish there was more consequence to some of this. Although I will say that Wingman did die. Wingman he stayed dead. He's the one member of Batman Incorporated that remained dead. Ghostmaker confirms that at the end. Wingman died along with Charles de Gaulle, the Joker member of Joker Incorporated, and also 30 innocent people died. And there is absolutely no question that if those 30 people could have been saved had they killed the members of Joker Incorporated, then I'm just going to straight up side with Ghostmaker here against all members of Batman Incorporated. There is a very, very compelling and strong argument to eliminate the terrorist. You don't negotiate with terrorists. That often by implication means you kill them. But I get it. It's Batman Incorporated. They got to have a code against killing. But this ongoing sort of ignoring the fact that by not killing the bad guy, you're literally letting civilians die. At some point, there should be a consequence for that on Batman Incorporated. And I was kind of hoping Ed Brisson would sort of dive a little bit more into that sort of moral dilemma and the consequences of that. And in my view, I would have liked to have seen more members of Batman Incorporated struggle with that and have doubts about that. But they all side with Batman, and where's the fun in that? But I don't want everybody to get along with everybody. But all in all, it set a nice status quo. I'm looking forward to this team moving forward. And I like Ghostmaker by himself. Give Ghostmaker his own series. Make it more of a Black Label series with Ghostmaker. Make him an aggressive killer like Batman, but he's got a better sex life. He's more violent. Ghostmaker's just more fun than Batman, in my view, in the hands of a good writer. And I have no problem with that writer is Ed Brisson. Go full killer mode with Ed Brisson and Ghostmaker. I would have no problem with that series. But yeah, I didn't mind it, but again, just a tad bit of disappointment. I wanted a little bit more drama in the end.
Yeah, even Raven Red, he doesn't kill Dusty Bronco for no other reason than he just doesn't. I can't do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's. Man, if somebody beat the crap out of my dad like that, I don't know that I'd have a hard time. I would have a harder time, I guess I should say, than Raven Red did with letting go. So anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Up next, we have Green Lantern 3 from writer Jeremy Adams. Zermanico is the artist. Romulo Fajardo Jr. handles the colors. Dave Sharp on letters. Hope you all had a chance to listen to my interview with Jeremy last week. Talked a little bit about why this is a great jumping on point for people that maybe haven't been reading Green Lantern. The Jack Herbert cover with is kind of interesting. Hal is in his Green Lantern suit, but he's flying a jet plane. Looks like maybe an F-14 or F-16. So looks cool. Anyway, what were your thoughts on this issue, Rock?
I thought this is a jumping on point. It almost felt like it could have been almost the first issue because not a heck of a lot. I didn't find a heck of a lot happens. I love cover A, by the way, which shows Hal Jordan fighting Sinestro, but that scene doesn't occur in the comic book at all. This issue just ends with Sinestro meeting Hal Jordan in a bar after Sinestro gets a bunch of alien co-conspirators and robs and kills a couple of guards at Ferris Aircraft and steals something from Ferris Aircraft. We don't know what it is. And it just ends with Sinestro meeting Hal Jordan in a bar at the end or surprising Hal Jordan by showing up at a bar that Hal Jordan was at. The first half of the issue was interesting in that it continues from actually the second issue, the non-Night Terror issues, and Hal Jordan is falling to Earth, and he uses the willpower to activate the ring again. And in your interview with Jeremy Adams, and again I encourage people to go see it. It was an excellent interview. Jeremy Adams does state the fact that Hal Jordan is still trying to figure out this strange ring, because this ring, what exactly are the parameters or limits of his power ring abilities now, because he got this seemingly off an old Manhunter suit. So it seemed, how exactly does it function? Well, it does seem to have. It seems to function in the old ways of the original rings, and Hal Jordan mentioned something that I just had completely forgot about. I didn't realize that the Green Lantern can create a construct that actually is something other than the color green. He can actually create a construct of an animal that looks like in any color, because with green light you can change the refraction on green light to basically blend in and create any color, and that's what Hal Jordan does. And he ultimately uses that later on in the issue. And so, the beginning of the issue, when Hal Jordan's falling to the earth and he interacts with some animals, there's some really nice scenes there. A great chance for Zermanico to really show off his art. The art's fantastic, and and then the other scene is Sinestro interacting with a couple of corporate head honchos that are actually aliens in disguise. Sinestro essentially wants to use them. He blackmails them by saying, "I will let the heroes of this planet know who you are and what I think you're up to, but I won't if you help me out." And how exactly they help Sinestro out, we're not sure, but Sinestro's accomplished something that involves the theft of something from Ferris Aircraft. He did kill some people, a couple of guards of Ferris Aircraft, and it's clearly Sinestro's up to something, but we still don't know what that is. We don't know why Sinestro's trapped on Earth, why he's on Earth, why he's in the situation he's in. So we're 3 issues in, and we still don't know exactly what's going on with Sinestro. But again, fantastic art, and again, I'm definitely coming back for more. And it's not Jeremy Adams' fault that he got sidetracked because of Night Terrors like everybody else did. But I'm still invested in this story. But I will say that this feels a little bit like it. I wish we'd have got a little bit more substance in this issue, but that might just be a sign of my excitement, because I have a feeling that we're going to be heading somewhere exciting here, because Jeremy Adams hinted in your interview again that Hal's not going to be staying on Earth forever. So I'm really curious to see what happens.
Yeah, I think this is the first time we really find out what Sinestro's up to. I mean, we don't find out fully, but we see some of his actions. Yeah. So I think Jeremy probably, and I should have asked him this, he probably didn't want to introduce that stuff too early, because knowing he was going to have the 2-issue break. I mean, it was just such terrible timing. So that being said, this is the first time we get a chance to see Sinestro. He did also mention he didn't want to drag that out, right? Like, you're 3/4 of the way through the issue, you find out Sinestro's had some sort of attack on Ferris Aircraft. We don't exactly know why, other than maybe for the psychological effects that it'll have on Hal, letting Hal know, hey, I'm on Earth, and you have no idea what I'm up to. And you at that point, you sort of think, well, yeah, we're going to be in for this multi-issue arc where Hal's searching around, trying to figure out how his ring works while trying to hunt down Sinestro. Where's he at? And then Jeremy flips it, right? Pulls the rug out from under us. And at the end, Sinestro goes looking for Hal and finds him without much effort. So skip over that whole, chase, cat and mouse sort of thing. Well, I like that. So, yeah, while you're right, this didn't have a ton of action, there were some cool moments, especially we'll call out the Hans Gruber moment with what Jeremy and I talked about, yeah, where Sinestro shows up in the back of a van, back of it's thrown open at Ferris Aircraft, walks in to do his heist or what have you. So again, we'll find out what he stole and what that's all about, and what's going on with Sinestro in subsequent issues. But I think we sort of needed this issue, first of all, to reestablish, remind us where Hal is, remind us that Hal's ring is not a normal ring. Jeremy mentioned it in the issue, how it's probably still has the weakness to yellow. And it can make more realistic constructs rather than just green constructs, which, according to Jeremy, he wasn't 100%. He acknowledged the fact that he could be wrong, but something like that hasn't been seen since the Silver Age. So, yeah, it's a great jumping on point. If you haven't been reading Green Lantern, you can pick this up, jump right on. But mention this when he and I were talking. There's only 2 issues out so far that haven't sold out at the distributor level, so you probably can still find those 2 issues, and I do recommend picking them up if you can find them. So, all right, up next we have Danger Street number 9.
No, there's the backup. Sorry, Rise of the Revenant Queen, the backup by Philip Kennedy Jones.
That's right. I forgot about the backup, which Jeremy and I touched on as well. So the backup is written by Philip Kennedy Johnson. Sorry, I'm just trying to get it back open again. And it leads directly into events that are happening in John Stewart War Journal. Again, hope you guys had a chance to listen to my chat with Philip Kennedy Johnson from a few weeks ago, where we discussed what to expect coming up in that series. But beyond the art in this, which is really, really great, from Montos, who's the same artist who's doing the regular series, colors by Adriana Lucas, letters by Dave Sharp. Beyond that, there's just a sense of real menace from this Revenant Queen, and how that's going to play out in the pages of John Stewart War Journal. So I do think that it would have been better had all three of these parts of the story, which basically you get 3 8-pagers, so it's the equivalent of one issue of a comic. It would have been better had it all come out before that first issue of Green Lantern War Journal. I think you should read these 3 and then go back and reread Green Lantern War Journal #1, because it does give more context. So yeah, I'm enjoying this. I'm more interested in John Stewart than I have been maybe ever, which Philip Kennedy Johnson and I talked about. Just a more interesting take. As powerful as John Stewart was in the hands of like Jeffrey Thorne, and as much of a leader, as important as he's been in terms of a linchpin of the Green Lantern Corps, this feels like a more human John Stewart, a more fallible John Stewart. And I say that knowing that he still has a lot of those same powers that Jeffrey Thorne gave him. But he feels more relatable and more interesting to me, as opposed to this two-dimensional, I'm a Marine, oorah, I have a power ring, and I always win the day. The John Stewart that's haunted by what happened in the pages of Mosaic with the planet Zanesh, or Zanshi, or whatever it's called. A John Stewart that is a little bit dealing with PTSD, that's showing some chinks in his armor, so to speak. That isn't just the macho gun-ho, two-dimensional military characterized John Stewart. That's more interesting to me. That's more relatable to me. So, yeah, check this out. Be sure you read the backup. And, hope you're reading John Stewart War Journal as well. What do you think of the back?
I like this Lantern Shepherd that who's from another multiverse, and there's a John Stewart and this Lantern Shepherd who are from this other universe where the Revenant Queen escapes. The Revenant Queen escapes the clutches of this very powerful iteration of John Stewart and this Shepherd Green Lantern in this other universe, and this Green Lantern named Shepherd is sent throughout the multiverse to find the Revenant Queen, and he's told by that universe's John Stewart that when you get to whatever universe she's in, you want to find the Revenant Queen, or you want to find the John Stewart of that universe first before you take on the Revenant Queen. I think there's an assumption by the other John Stewart that Earth Zero John Stewart is maybe just as powerful as he is, and that's probably a safe assumption. But this is a very different type of John Stewart than the other universe's John Stewart, who seems to have fully embraced all his power. This John Stewart seems much more sort of laid back, wanting to maybe escape that life, and it's going to be interesting to see. You hinted at it. Maybe he does have some PTSD. Maybe he's got some other issues he's dealing with. And it's gonna be very interesting. I'm very intrigued to see where Philip Kennedy Johnson takes this story, because once Lantern Shepherd finds him and he takes on this Revenant Queen who Earth Zero John Stewart has never faced before, it's going to be a real test for John Stewart. And this new Green Lantern Shepherd is going to confront a John Stewart who probably isn't as experienced as the John Stewart that he's accustomed to seeing in the other universe, where John Stewart is like the legend. He's like Hal Jordan status. And so it's pretty cool. And it's a way of, I like what Philip Kennedy Johnson's doing. He's given a lot of gravitas and agency to John Stewart, propping him up and giving him the sort of respect that he deserved, in much the same way that I think Jeffrey Thorne really very much attempted to do in his run, but because it got drowned out in maybe some all different kinds of plots, maybe Jeffrey Thorne wasn't quite as successful as maybe PKJ is going to attempt to make it for John Stewart. So very interesting to see what'll happen.
Yeah, looking forward to it. And Jeremy also mentioned there at some point there is a collision course that these two series are on. So how that crossover will work, and he teased something coming next summer. Sounds like maybe a big Green Lantern event. So we'll see how that plays out as well. All right, now we're on to Danger Street Book 9. Dr. Fate is the title of it, which is interesting because nobody shows up in this issue except for Manhunter and what's the other guy's name? Can't even remember.
Codename Assassin.
Yeah, Codename Assassin. I kept thinking Assassin, but I knew it was more than that. Yeah, Codename Assassin. They're basically the only two characters that show up here in this ninth issue. So, written by Tom King, Jorge Fornes handles the art, Dave Stewart on colors, Clayton Cowell on letters. Yeah, take it away, Rocky. What'd you think?
This was the first fairly significant miss for me from this series. I've been loving this series. You and I both have been really loving what Tom King's been putting out lately. In fact, I'm hard pressed to think of something. I'd have to go back to his Batman Catwoman series, which was something I demonstrably did not like. But pretty much everything Tom King has done, I've really been enjoying. And I've really been enjoying in Danger Street. The previous 8 issues of Danger Street, I've really enjoyed. But man, it came to a crashing halt, my enjoyment with this issue. And bottom line is, this entire issue, all of the pages, every single page, there's 8 panels on every single page. And it's all one long fight scene and one long conversation between these epic warriors, these great assassins, the Manhunter, who always finds his man, and Codename Assassin, who also always completes a mission. They are both very supremely intelligent. They're both devious. They're both killers. And this entire issue consists of a conversation where they sort of try to psychologically read each other and physically read each other's body movements, et cetera, et cetera. And I read this issue 3 times, and I kept looking for trying to find some hidden meaning or something in the issue, and something to hang my hat on to really enjoy, and I didn't find it. I found it pretentious. I found it almost laughable at points. How they end up treating each other and talking to each other, and how it ends up resolving itself. And it's unclear who won the battle. I'm not sure if they both died at the end, or if they're, at one point, Manhunter I think at one point ends up losing, losing a limb, and then Codename Assassin is stabbed, and I'm not sure exactly who won, or if it was a draw, or where it's going to lead to, because it ends very abruptly. So not only was this like a 30-page fight scene, or whatever, how many pages there are, but this was disappointing me, and artistically it was extremely disappointing, because the 8-panel grid became so monotonous after a while. There was no double page spread. I've done a thumbnail for those who are just listening on the podcast and can't see it. I did a thumbnail that I think is more exciting than the entire issue artistically. Obviously, I use the art, but where I at least stand them off. It's a full page spread of Manhunter and Codename Assassin sort of, fencing off against squaring off against each other. That to me is cool, is epic, but we got no double page spread. And artistically, this was an opportunity for the artist to really shine, because artistically, Jorge, who's the artist here?
Jorge Fornes.
Jorge Fornes. I mean, he's a fantastic artist. But obviously, whatever, I know, we're familiar enough with his work that obviously he had a game plan here, and this had to have been specifically planned. But I was so disappointed with this. I never got whatever Tom King was trying to accomplish. This is why I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Maybe you'll enlighten me as to what I missed. But I just thought this was a significant miss for me. I thought this was boring. Every single issue prior to this one, we were interspersed with different scenes. Because there was multiple players, and we kept going back and forth to different. And this was the first issue where we focused exclusively on this big battle. and it doesn't really end. We don't really, it's unclear as to how it ends, and it's so long and drawn out. And it was a miss for me. And this was the first significant miss for me in this entire series. I can't wait till it resumes because I miss the other characters. But I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this. But this was a significant miss for me.
Yeah, so I think that was the point, right? Like the fact that all along we've had these different plot threads, different characters have been spotlight's been on all of them, and you and I have both remarked on how incredible it is that King can take these seemingly disparate characters of Lady Cop and Green Team and Outsiders and Manhunter, Warlord, Starman, and weave a story that makes sense. And that's been what's so interesting. But leave it to King to you could look at it one of two ways. He either shoots himself in the foot here, or he flips the script and focuses just on a few minutes. This fight between these two characters who are, to steal a line from across the street, who are the best they are at what they do. It makes it stand out that much more, right? So it's either going to really work and you're going to like the issue a lot and appreciate kind of the experimentation and storytelling style and the irony of what's going on here, what's happening, or you're going to think, oh my God, I just want the regular story. Why is this was felt interminable? There's so much text to read, blah, blah, blah. I fall into the former camp. I thought it was brilliant. It's such a juxtaposition, right? Like when you think about, and we'll talk about this when we get to Waller versus Wildstorm and Wildstorm versus Waller, what have you. You think about assassins, you think about people like Deathstroke and what they do, and it's so matter of fact, right? You don't think about it. They're going to kill whoever they're going to kill. You can't stop them. They're so good. And there's a perception that they're very cunning, right? But you don't necessarily think of them as really intelligent on that level, right? Like really genius level intelligence in terms of having this morality and this grasp of philosophy and the way things work, with life and kind of these big philosophical, esoteric concepts. So I just found that to be really interesting that Tom King took these two guys, or you could think of as just kind of gritty street level killers who just make their money and make their living by killing people. And he ascribes these personality traits to them where they're really sort of transcending this idea of like the mob hitman, unintelligent, just soldier following orders kind of cliche that so many storytellers use, or the cliche that's the perception that a lot of readers have. Both Manhunter and Codename Assassin, they have a very meta understanding of who they are and who each other is, and they're sort of diametrically opposed with the way they look at things, the way they look at life and death, and why they do what they do. And that's why they're having this discussion, right? It's not really an argument. It's not really a fight when you talk just in terms of their debate, their verbal debate. And then at the end, what they come to realize and what we as readers come to realize sooner than they do, because it becomes all much more obvious to the reader as they're espousing these ideals. They're much more alike, if not exactly alike, than they are different. Obviously, their powers are a little bit different, their abilities are a little bit different, what have you. But in terms of the way they see things, the way they see the world, they come at it from a different angle, but it's closer to being the same than it is to being different. So interesting, right? That King really goes overboard here with the amount of dialogue and how long it takes to read the issue. But as I'm reading this and going, oh my God, the concepts these guys are putting out there are so heady, right? They're so highbrow and high level. And you just don't expect that, but there's sort of this humor, this really sort of dry sort of humor, in the fact that these two hitmen who make their living doing maybe the simplest thing there is to do, just, hey, I'm just going to kill a guy because I'm being paid to do it. that's juxtaposed against this sort of genius level philosophical intellect that each of them has. So I found that to be really, really fun. Um, I think, again, the 8 panel grid is intentional because it does allow us to have Manhunter on the left and Codename Assassin on the right, and really trade back and forth between the two to give us, that real back and forth feel. So I get it. I get what you're saying, Rob, in terms of this being really different from every issue that's come before. And if that's your expectation, I could see how some people could be disappointed in this. For me, it worked. I think for a number of people, it's probably not going to work. But I give King credit for trying, number one, and I give Jorge Fornes and Dave Stewart, who did a lot of heavy lifting. There's a lot of lettering to be done. I give them a lot of credit for making this work visually. So, which is not always easy to do. Fornes' line work is superb, and his storytelling is very, very good. So it's got to be a challenge for Dave Stewart to be sure not to cover up that art and really make it work. So I think I said Dave Stewart. Dave Stewart's a color artist. Clayton Cowles is the letterer who does really superb work on this. So yeah, for me it worked. But that being said, it certainly isn't my favorite. Not my favorite issue of the series. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's my least favorite either. I don't know that I could pick a least favorite. But I did appreciate it for what it was. I appreciated what King was trying to do. But I totally get your criticism, and I think it's perfectly valid. For a lot of people, it's like, okay, I see what you did there. I see the joke, sort of a highbrow, dry humor type joke. You could have made that joke. The argument is going to be made, and this may be a legitimate argument. You could have pulled that joke off in like 3 pages. You didn't need to take the whole issue.
Yeah.
And there might be some truth to that. But I'm not going to begrudge King the. You got to give it to him, right? He stuck to his guns. He's like, I'm going to make this joke. I'm going to make this point. I'm going to do this fight between these two this way, and I'm going to take the whole issue because it really sells it. It really sells how evenly matched these guys are. And who knows? There might be something coming in the last 4 issues here that harkens back to this and gives it more context and gives more of a reason why it needed to take a whole issue. So we'll see. But yeah, other than these 2 guys, nobody else shows up. We do get the Commodore's voice over the phone, but other than that, yeah, it's just these 2 guys beating the shit out of each other, basically.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
That's really it. It's just sort of like, I was hoping that maybe they'd come to some deep realization, but the realization was, as you say, that they're more alike than not, and they even they both know that they're both pawns. They both acknowledge that they're pawns, but they can't overcome their assassin nature. They need to complete their job. They want to kill each other. That's their jobs, and they even hint at knowing that there's more at stake here than just their lives. And yet they almost refuse to embrace the bigger picture and maybe work together. I mean, these guys are not going to work together. They pretend, they almost mislead or try to deceive each other, but they still ultimately go back to their nature of being killers, and they want to fulfill the mission, fulfill a job of killing each other. And there's no question that comes through. I don't know if I needed every single page to convey that, but as you said, I think it could have been done over 5 or 6 pages interspersed in the same pattern that King had embraced in the previous issues. But either way, it's a very interesting issue, and it's going to be interesting to see how other reviewers overall, not just you and I, how this will go over with a lot of others, because we got the 9-panel grids. Now we got the 8-panel grids for battles. I personally would prefer not to see this again, but if we did, I'd like a little bit more, maybe less talky, more graphic nature, although we did get a 1 leg cut off here, which was maybe kind of cool to see. But in any event, interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we got a leg cut off, and we got we got one of them that was, actually, I think they both were run all the way through with swords. Yeah. So yeah, there's plenty of blood, plenty of action. So, all right. Up next, we have Superman Lost #6, plot and script by Christopher Priest, Carlo Pugulian on plot and art, Jason Paz on inks, Jeremy Cox on colors. What'd you think?
This this was I almost kind of predictable. I was surprised at how predictable this was. I was actually um, we the bulk of this issue has Superman on his planet where he's basically lost on, and what writer Christopher Priest sort of establishes here, I thought was something quite interesting, and that the people of this planet that that Clark is on is they actually get sick of Clark. Superman wants to save the people on the planet. The planet's going to be destroyed. And what Christopher Priest does is that he almost establishes Clark as being in the same position as his father, Jor-El, was on Krypton. Superman knows that the planet's going to be destroyed, but he can't convince the world's leaders on the planet that he's on that their planet's going to be destroyed. And he even has the help of a Green Lantern named Hope, that who even, she's got an agenda of her own. She loves Clark, and she even killed one of Clark's friends, Jimmy, who was going to tell Clark 10 years ago. He was going to disclose to Clark that about this time displacement phenomena in space, that it operates on 20-year intervals, and you can find your way back home, and this is how you do it. But Hope doesn't want to lose Clark, so she sabotaged that last issue by killing Jimmy. And here in this issue, it's years later, and it's discovered that Clark himself is having no success convincing the leaders of this particular world that they're going to be destroyed. In fact, he's only managed to be successful in uniting the world against him. The greatest irony. It's like the tragedy of Krypton all over again, and the curse that befell Jor-El now befalls Clark. Jor-El failed to save Krypton. The world leaders on Krypton didn't believe Jor-El, and no one on this planet believes Superman, and it's really tragic. And in fact, what I find really kind of funny is that the leaders on this planet built an ark. And Superman thought that they were building an ark to save as many people as they can from the planet ultimately being destroyed. But no, they built the ark as a failsafe device to get Superman off and send him home, to get him off the planet. That's how much this planet hates Superman. I thought that was a little bit over the top. I thought that's the one maybe criticism. I'm not sure how this planet, it's Christopher Priest. He's clearly making a statement maybe about how he maybe feels about our planet. Could our world be so blinded by our own intra bigotry and noise that and our culture wars that we ignore the truth when it's staring us in the face? Because the people of this planet seem to be ignoring the facts that they're going to die. Their planet is going to be destroyed. But there's so much interpolitical wrangling between them. It's their cultures, the way they intermingle, are so toxic that they can't see the truth no matter what Superman does. And they go so far as to build an ark as a failsafe device to get Superman away from their world. And ultimately, it's more or less successful. Clark ends up going on this ark to basically leave the planet. And unfortunately, his powers, which have been slowly draining from him over the last 20 odd or 13 or so years, he ends up at the very end getting sort of sucked into a wormhole and basically about to be destroyed, killed. But suddenly an older version of himself rescues him, warning him not to do what he's about to do. And so obviously we got some time shenanigans, some time displacement going on, and suggestion that Superman meets his future self. And so there's a lot of Christopher Priest is doing his own comic book science here and working with some time travel and what have you. But I thought that the broader moral questions here and what it says about this world and perhaps for those of us who choose to see it, how it perhaps reflects the darker nature of our own, I found very interesting. And especially I saw a juxtaposition between Clark and his father Jor-El there, and the tragedy of it sort of repeating itself. And then when you compound that with the fact that Hope, who he considered his friend, was responsible for killing Jimmy and preventing Superman from knowing that he had the means to escape for all these years, and she did nothing because she's afraid of losing his love. I think Christopher Priest has done a good job here. This is, I think, a thought-provoking issue, and I don't mind the politics of it here. To me, this is an issue that I don't mind politics or philosophies that make you think and maybe question the nature of our own world, and that's what this did. And I enjoyed this overall. But again, oddly enough, it felt like, and yet it felt like almost predictable. I think this theme was Christopher Priest did such a good job laying the foundation for where he was going in previous issues that it didn't feel surprising where this issue took me, but took the reader. But so overall, I guess I enjoyed it. I enjoy it more now that I've articulated myself right now. So what do you think of it?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that it was a little bit predictable, a little bit paint by numbers. Superman is Superman. He's going to react. He's going to, in a way that you can again sort of predict. So, despite the people not wanting, in spite of the people not wanting to listen to him, or being finally united, but just in their desire to have him lead the planet, it all makes sense. Maybe the only surprising thing, but even this, when you stop and think about it, is not so surprising. He almost seems to have a romantic relationship with this Green Lantern Hope, who you mentioned killed this kid Jimmy, who was Clark's first friend on this planet, planet Kansas, as he calls it. And it sort of took me out of the story a little bit. I don't know how realistic that is, that Hope could kill this kid and Clark not realize. She's sort of codependent, dialed up to 11 when you think about it, right?
Yeah.
She kills this kid because she's so afraid of being alone. She doesn't want Clark to go back to Earth. How did he not see that? How did he not realize, especially being that this story, you go back to the time that Jimmy first showed up and then Hope showed up and they've been living together. We're talking about decades here. So, I mean, have they been physically affectionate? It's sort of implied, but maybe not 100%. So it goes back to how could he have missed this? Well, I give credit to Christopher Priest for at least addressing that when Clark realizes what Hope has done, which kind of loses it, thinking that he may be leaving anyway on this arc, as you called it, that with the star drive that the governments of Kansas have built and want to use to get rid of him. She sort of loses it. And he says, he's like, God, how did I miss this? I was so wrapped up on my own self-pity and, self-absorbed and what have you, that I didn't even see what was right in front of my face. So at least Priest addressed that. You sort of hope that, and the whole idea of Superman is better than us, right? That's something that I would do, or something that you might do. Be so wrapped up in our own problems that we sort of miss the forest for the trees. Superman's supposed to be better than that, but at the same time, you want to tell interesting stories. Sometimes you gotta take a little bit of a different tack. So, if you're watching this on YouTube, everybody, Rocky does have the cover, the Gary Frank cover up, which is really fantastic. Sort of mimics the symbol on Superman's chest there, with the personal survival kit white suit that he has, with his a picture of himself in the background there in the shape of an S. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this series. The Carlo Pagulian art is just second to none. Issue after issue after issue, it's absolutely fantastic. So this is one of these series I'm enjoying each individual issue. Each individual issue is really good. That being said, it is a Christopher Priest story. Often his stories can be a little esoteric and they can be a little complicated, and they read great in big chunks. So as much as I'm enjoying each individual issue, I'm really looking forward. As soon as the last issue comes out, I'll probably go back and reread the whole thing in one sitting. I might, when the last issue is out, what I might even do is I probably shouldn't do this because it's going to give different context to the final issue. But I may just start with issue 1 and read it all the way through, and then get a chance to read that ending for the last time. Yeah. That's how much I'm enjoying this. I just think it's fantastic.
I think this is going to read really well as a trade, because it actually reads pretty well even as individual issues, but as a trade, it might even read much better. And I should add too that at the end, at the back of this issue, there's a preview. There is a preview of Wonder Woman issue 1. and which are pages that have been added to Superman Lost at the end of it, at least in our preview copies. So just for those who are curious, that's not the case for some of the other, oddly enough, for some of the other issues that come out this week. Not all of them have a Wonder Woman issue 1 preview, so might be worth checking out for some.
Yeah, I think that Wonder Woman issue 1 comes out next week. We should probably have a deep dive, um, dedicated episode to that, just so
We
everybody knows.
shall. Yes, we will.
All right. Up next, we have World's Finest Teen Titans #3, written by Mark Waid. Emmanuel Lupacchino is the artist. Colors by Jordi Belair. Letters by Steve Wands. The Titans go to Titans Con. It's basically what Mark Waid's idea of a comic book convention is, but dedicated to the Titans. And they all go there except for Robin, who Batman encourages not to go. He's like, you shouldn't be getting that close to the public. You're risking your secret identity. You need to, kind of have that separation. Robin's making the argument that Wally made, hey, this is getting the Titans out there, letting people know that we're around so that we can help. Well, it goes about as well as you would expect, with a bunch of rabid con goers and mob mentality, as it were. And the Titans feel a little bit overwhelmed. Their personal boundaries aren't necessarily respected. And then this sort of scuzzy, sloppy, long-haired kid shows up wearing some pink sunglasses. He almost has like a poor man's Gambit costume on, and apparently he has some magical abilities, and he uses some spells, and he attacks the Titans with the apparent intention of kidnapping Bumblebee. He wants to have some sort of romantic relationship with her, sort of
Yeah.
creepy, as I said.
Yeah.
Robin shows up. I don't know. It's not exactly explained why he shows up. If he realizes they're in trouble or what have you. But he shows up and kind of says, hey, don't you see this guy over here with the hand gestures? He's the one who's causing all the problems. Bumblebee takes him out, and they save the day. But at the end, we see that the kid, while being taken to jail, some mysterious figure breaks him out of the police car he's in and says, welcome to the Terror Titans. So apparently we're getting the Terror Titans in the pages of Teen Titans. So this was just okay for me. Probably my least favorite of these World's Finest Teen Titans issues so far. Also felt like the art was a little bit rushed. Wasn't quite as exciting as it has been in the past. And the colors, I get that this book it's strange. We've talked about, the setting, the timing of it before. It's the Titans at the beginning of their journey together as Titans. But yet it's sort of in modern day because they have, cell phones and all that sort of stuff. I'm guessing that's the reason why they do such a muted palette, but this isn't really a traditional superhero book. So in my mind, it would work a lot better with more primary colors that are brighter and pop off the page a little more, um, instead of them feeling a little dull, which it, it it doesn't make it dreary, so to speak, but it doesn't make it like an exciting read either. I think with more primary colors that pop off the page more, it would just have a more exciting feel for the book rather than feeling a little pedestrian. So, what do you think of this?
I thought it was okay. I have mixed feelings about it because I don't mind a Silver Age kind of feel, and I know what Mark Waid's trying to do, but I found myself pretty bored with this issue. I didn't find it exciting, and but I know what Mark Waid's trying to do, and I have to say this is probably really accessible to brand new readers because one of the things that does need to be done, and Mark Waid is doing it. He's saying, look, if the Titans in their formative years actually existed in current continuity, that would be 10 years ago. There would be there were Comic Cons 10 years ago. There was social media 10 years ago. And he's updating it. He's updating the history of the Teen Titans in a way that needs to be done. So this has to be done this way. I just don't find it all that exciting, to be honest. Although, in defense of Mark Waid, he's introducing potentially new characters. I think Emanuela Lapacino's art, I think it is appropriate and it's fitting. I actually like her particular style. I always have since I think I first became familiar with her style on Wonder Woman, in some issues of Wonder Woman. But in any event, I thought this was interesting. The fact that the Titans, they're going to learn the hard way the foolishness of, you know, having Comic Cons named after yourself, revealing your secret identity, or not revealing your secret identity, but potentially putting in danger the revelation of your secret identity. And Batman states the obvious to Robin. That's why he doesn't let Dick Grayson join his friends at Titan. Dick Grayson wants to join them. He wants to join his friends, but Batman won't let him go. He puts his foot down, saying, "You're not going. You're not gonna. I'm not gonna have our identities compromised because you want to hang out with a bunch of teenagers at basically a comic book expo." That's kind of what he says, and it's hard not to agree with Batman. He's right on this. But Red Arrow, I guess. Pardon me. It's Red Arrow, I guess, but the future Arsenal. You know, Roy Harper is just kind of being a dick here, and you can see the beginnings of the conflict that ultimately that they're going to have, that will lead to them probably make more adult decisions as they grow older as a team. Aqualad is still dating Donna Troy, so that dysfunctional relationship has yet to fall apart. We already know why it will fall apart. We kind of saw that last issue. They're not a good fit, and so Mark Waid's doing everything right. I just find myself strangely not particularly. I don't find it really compelling. I don't find this really all that interesting, although that might change. We shall see.
Yeah, I mean, these are established characters. The relationships, the dynamics, and what have you are established as well. So, but this is an interesting take, being that it's, you know, the beginnings in modern times, as we've said. So, all right, last book we're going to talk about in detail: Waller versus Wildstorm #3, from writers Spencer Ackerman and Evan Narcisse. Jesus Moreno handles pencils and inks on pages 1 through 5. Vicente Cifuentes handles inks on pages 6 through 32. Michael Atea on colors. Dave Sharp on letters. This is Deathstroke trying to take out King, trying to take out his enemy, or Amanda Waller's enemy, I guess you'd say, because he does. Slade does try to blow him up in this Intercontinental Hotel in Gomorrah. And when he blows it up, and Amanda Waller says, does that mean the target's down? And he says, well, if he doesn't come rocketing down here to beat my ass, then yeah. But unfortunately, King does just that, and a battle ensues where Deathstroke takes the low road, as you would expect him to do, to save his own skin, threatens some civilians that King has to save. Meanwhile, Lois Lane is continuing her investigation, runs into Philip Marlowe in Gomorrah, and he kind of gives her a lowdown on some of the things that are going on that the general public isn't aware of, that doesn't exactly paint Amanda Waller in a good light, I guess you'll say. And that's about as simplistic as I can make the story, because, again, there's a lot of backstabbing and betrayal and deceit and what have you. It's a very political book, and very complicated, as I mentioned at the beginning. And with the 2-month break, it's hard exactly to remember. This is another one, much like Superman Lost, will read much better in a collected edition. But even then, I sort of feel like this level of complication in a comic isn't really for the best. Spencer Ackerman is more known for writing prose. I think it's easier to do this sort of storytelling in prose because you just have so much more real estate with the written word, as opposed to being restricted. And there are things being restricted in a comic with how much, actual words you can have. You expect the visuals to do a lot of the heavy lifting, but sometimes it's hard to convey really complex emotions and storytelling beats and betrayals and what have you in just a straight visual. And even if you do a brilliant job of it, that doesn't mean that the reader or the person who's looking at the pictures is going to pick up on it. As opposed to in a book, in a prose novel, it's right there. And if you read the words, as long as they're words in a language you understand, you're going to know what's going on. In a way, that type of storytelling, prose storytelling, is a little bit more spoon feeding the story to the reader, as opposed to expecting the reader to do some of the work, like a comic sort of has those expectations or has that requirement. So yeah, this is, it just might not be working as a comic, but it's hard to say. I do think you got to read it all in one sitting, all four oversized issues. They're all like 32 pages, I think. So they're all about the length of a comic and a half. So you end up with about six books worth of story when it's all said and done.
Yeah.
And I think it will be an entertaining story when it's all said and done, if not a little overwrought and a little more complicated than it needs to be. But on the positive side, it does appear that Amanda Waller may get some comeuppance, which that's always a good thing in my mind. So we'll see if she gets away with it. Then maybe, you know, I might be ranting and raving next time, going, "God, this series was terrible. She got away with it. Amanda Waller, she's such a scumbag." Anyway, the art is fantastic from Jesus Moreno. That cannot be argued in my mind. Beautifully colored. You know, we do get a lot of action. That fight between Slade and King is interesting, and Moreno does a good job of keeping it visually interesting as well. Because a lot of times, and this has been the case with this book throughout, when you're talking about a political book, a book with a lot of, you know, betrayal and espionage and political intrigue, it tends to be a little bit of a talking head book, right? Like it's a bunch of people getting these ideas across by talking to one each other or debating with one another, and that can lead to boring issues. But even in the scenes with Marlowe and Lois Lane walking and talking, Moreno does a good job of keeping it visually interesting. So got to give him credit for that. What are your thoughts on this one, Rock?
Well, I was actually intrigued with this because the way I read this issue is that it reached a point where, you know, Waller and King wanted to take down Amanda Waller. King believed very strongly that Amanda Waller was making a power move and was the true villain here, but it ends up, at least if this issue is accurate, if I read this accurate, it looks like Adele, Deathstroke's Slade Wilson's ex-wife, is the true villain. Amanda Waller did not plan, nor did Amanda Waller want King to be actually killed like he ultimately ended up being by Deathstroke in this issue. Amanda Waller was, I think, taken aback and surprised by Adele making the power move that she did. And, you know, because this is a younger Amanda Waller. This is Amanda Waller at the beginning of her career. I don't think she's necessarily as hard-ass or badass as we know she will ultimately become. And I know you don't like Amanda Waller, and I know she's really turned into some badass villain, it would appear, in the current DC universe. But what I found interesting in this issue is that I got the impression that Amanda Waller almost felt bad about what ultimately the fate that happened to King here. And when Marlowe shows up as basically the janitor who worked for Checkmate, but he knew all this information that he relayed to Lois Lane about the true agenda of Checkmate as ultimately being to have Checkmate be at the forefront of the metahuman superpowers, the metahuman Cold War that will ultimately arise. They want to be at the forefront of that, and how they want to take out King because King would basically expose all that. I thought it worked really well. Slade Wilson he's a deadly assassin here. His cruelty that he shows toward King, the fate that King ultimately suffers in this issue. This is graphic. This is hardcore. This is definitely what one considered to be Black Label. And even the fate of Lois Lane, if it wasn't for Amanda Waller stepping in, Adele, Lois Lane could have been killed in this issue too. I thought the stakes were high. I felt the gravity of the situation. I got to give Spencer Ackerman some credit for that. I felt that Lois Lane's life was in danger, even though it's Lois Lane. And yeah, of course, Lois Lane's not going to die. They can't kill Lois Lane. But I did feel a tinge of danger for Lois Lane. And I thought it worked really well. And it's been building this for a while. I also surprised myself because sometimes I forget and you have to explain to me some plot points, but I actually remembered the previous plot points in this. So maybe that's why I enjoyed it maybe a little more than you did. I don't know. But I think this will read much better as when it's collected in one hardcover. And it's a curious choice for a series. For Spencer Ackerman, of all the things he wants to write, this is kind of a curious choice for him to choose as a series. But I find myself oddly enjoying this, and I'm really, really curious to see how this ends, because this does take place in the 1980s, in the mid 1980s, and it can't really fit into existing continuity. So this is sort of an odd choice for a Black Label story, but I do find myself strangely entertained, and I wonder if one could view this as well, I guess you can't. I was going to say you could view this as an origin story for Amanda Waller, but how do you fit that into existing continuity? You can't. But in any event, I was oddly surprised by the graphic violence in this issue, and I did not see the death of King coming. I just did not see that coming, and so I'm really curious to see how that ends. And hey, man, this might actually be a comic book that has consequences, and so we'll have to wait and see how it wraps up.
Yeah, I did find the death of King to be a little um, convenient. I guess we'll say not that it wasn't a surprise, and not that that wasn't what Slade was after, but the way he kills him, it's like, really, that's a kind of a 1 in a million. But whatever, it's neither here nor there. I won't spoil it. You can check it out for yourself. You're right. I did have the same thought about being sort of an origin story. If Amanda Waller does sort of survive the setup that Adele has, or the trap Adele has set for her, then it's kind of lesson learned, right? It could explain why Amanda herself is so ruthless and doesn't give a shit, because she herself was set up. But and it's not the same Amanda Waller of the main DCU that's so despicable. So, but maybe this is how she becomes so despicable, because she was really set up and manipulated herself. So I guess you could say this is how she learned it, from experiencing it firsthand. So, all right. Batman Gargoyle of Gotham. Again, it does not come out today as we're recording this, or as you're listening to this on Tuesday the 12th, but rather comes out on Batman Day the 16th. It is by Raphael Grandpa. He's the writer and artist. John Workman is the letterer. There is a black and white version called the Noir Edition. I really recommend getting that. I think it's absolutely fantastic when we get a chance to see the line work from Grandpa without the colors. Not that the colors don't add to the mood and tension, but I don't even think that it's necessary. Seeing the black and white, and I guess there is technically red as well, because whenever there's blood present, we get to see that. But it's just so much more striking with the limited color palette, and seeing this new character, Cry Tune. It just feels a little bit more impactful when we get it in black and white. But as far as the story itself, we're really just getting started. And as Grandpa has told me, as he talked about in the panel at San Diego Comic-Con, as he's said in various interviews, this in the background of Gotham with these new villains. There's 5, I believe, that are going to be introduced, 5 or 6, 3 that we know about. Mothra, Crytune, and I can't remember, the Virgin, I think is the third one that has already been revealed, but there's going to be 2 or 3 more in this Gotham that is increasingly a dangerous place. There's a feeling from Bruce Wayne where he decides that or I should say a feeling from Batman, he needs to kill Bruce Wayne. He's going to stage a car accident so that he can be free to be Batman all the time. That's the other part of the story that's going on. So this was absolutely fantastic. And again, we'll probably talk about it in more detail, more spoilery on next week's episode after everybody's had a chance to read it. I should also mention that for the colorized version, it's Mateus Lopez who does the colors. And the color work is done very well also. It's not, this bright palette in that traditional superhero way, which it shouldn't be. This is a darker tale, a darker Gotham. Everything's a little bit more muted, dark and gritty. And a lot of the scenes we have with Crytune are almost black and white. The villain, Crytune, is inspired by this old 1930s black and white cartoon of this little baby character who's always crying whenever they're on screen. So thus the name Crytune. And that's where this villain has taken his name from. So yeah, it's fantastic. I'm looking forward to talking about it in more detail. Definitely recommend picking it up, whether color version works for you, or you want to go with the noir version. Anything to add, Rocky?
Yeah, I really was. The more I read it, I read through the issue twice. I really grew to love the art. It really grew on me. It was one of those. It doesn't happen often, but at first the art was a little jarring to me. But then, my God, by the time I started reading the second time, I felt inspired to even do up some extra thumbnails for it. I love the Batmobile. I love the Batmobile. I love the scenes, the detail of some of the scenes of Arkham Asylum, of a crime scene, of even Batman. The way that Raphael Grandpa draws the utility belt of Batman is so cool too, and the costume, it's so unique, and it's just cool. There's some really like visually stunning ideas, and even there's even pages where he's drawing like medical journals and the details in the medical journals of the anatomy and the skulls and everything, and it's just it really is incredible if you just sit back and look at the art. And one of the benefits we get of getting the almost looking at the black and white, the black and white version as well. It's equally stunning in black and white, and so reading it again in black and white, it didn't take away from the experience at all. And in many ways, I lack the vocabulary right now to describe just the difference in the tone. Not that there's difference, but it is a slightly different reading experience when you read something in black and white than with color. And it's interesting that to be able to read this twice, once in color, once in black and white, it made for a very interesting experience. And I can't wait to talk about it with you later as we get into more spoilery details later this week. And again, encourage everybody out to get out there for Batman Day to your local comic book shop and pick up Batman Gotham, Gargoyle of Gotham. And in case I didn't spell it out, I enjoyed it. It gets a high recommend from me. So.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, collected editions that are out this week. Batman, the Joker, the Deadly Duo, Deluxe Edition hardcover. That's the Mark Silvestri story, which we really, really enjoyed. Also, Dark Knights of Steel, Volume 1, which collects Tom Taylor's Dark Knights of Steel, issues 1 through 6. We've got a reissuing of Shazam, Power of Hope hardcover. That's written by Paul Dini. Alex Ross is the artist. Very famous cover of Shazam or Captain Marvel looking up at the sun shining on his face. If you've seen Alex Ross art, you've seen it. Trust me. Batman Incorporated, the aforementioned that we talk about in detail, the final issue. Well, you can check out the first 6 issues in a hardcover. No More Teachers, the first arc, very, very good. From writer Ed Brisson, John Timms on art. Harley Quinn, the animated series Legion of Bats, hardcover from writer T. Franklin. Shea Beagle and John McKell on art. That's the one that really ties in with the animated series. I didn't read it as they were coming out. It didn't really interest me. And I think that is it for collections this week. So there were a few other regular issues that came out this week that we didn't talk about. So I'll go over those real quick for those that read Batman Scooby-Doo. We've got Batman Scooby-Doo Mysteries number 12. Also, Looney Tunes has its 274th issue out this week as well. So bit of a lighter week. I don't know that it makes it easy to choose a book of the week, Rocky, or if it makes it
well,
makes
for
it
me, yeah, for me, I actually, it's pick of the week is Superman Lost for me. That's the one that I got to go with. Yeah, because Christopher Priest, I think, did a good job, and I just enjoyed the themes that he's playing with again. And I have a feeling I'm going to be buying this as a hardcover because I really like again, the psychological journey that Superman goes on, and just the way that the parallels between him and his father, and what it says about our planet, and it's definitely Christopher Priest has something to say here, and he's doing it subtly and perhaps not so subtly, depending on what the disposition is of the reader. And I think it's well done, and really great art by Paglin and I apologize. I know I pronounced that wrong. So yeah, I would have to go with Superman Lost. What about yourself?
Yeah, I probably have to go with Superman Lost. It's kind of it's tough because um, I'd probably go with Gargoyle of Gotham, but that doesn't come out till Saturday. So technically, is it part of this week? Would it be part of next week? So yeah, if I've got to choose between one of the ones we've reviewed in detail, I'd go with Superman Lost as well for a lot of the reasons you said, especially that Carlo Puglian art. Um, but Danger Street was really great as well. I know it didn't work for you, and I know it's not going to work for a lot of people, but I did really enjoy it. But Superman Lost for me, if I had to pick one, that's probably the one I'm going with. And there is one more collection I should actually. There's two. I forgot to mention GCPD, the Blue Wall hardcover that collects all 6 issues of the John Ridley series. But also there's a reissuing of the Batman '89 series, or it's actually a one shot. That came out right around the time the movie came out, the very first Tim Burton Batman movie with Michael Keaton as Batman. There is a reissuing of that one shot that's coming out, but that doesn't come out until Batman Day as well. So if you're a fan of that version of Batman, you haven't had a chance to check it out, there is a new printing hardcover, so you can check that out as well. And yeah, that's gonna do it for this this episode rather. We appreciate you guys joining us as always. Don't forget to leave some comments down below. Give us your thoughts on Danger Street. I'm curious to know if more people feel like Rocky felt about it, or more people feel like I felt. I'd be really curious to see what people's thoughts are. But don't forget to head over to YouTube and subscribe to Rocky's channel, Comic Space Boom! ! Ring the notification bell, subscribe, leave some comments as I mentioned. If you want to check out the other content we have on the Comic Source audio only side, just go to wherever you get your podcast and do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe. Have a lot of interviews this week with a lot of crowd-funded projects that are coming up, so be on the lookout for that. And yeah, we appreciate the support as always. Don't forget the Cull issue number 2 is out this week as well from writer Kelly Thompson. Rocky and I both really enjoyed the first issue and did quite the deep dive on it. So be sure to check it out. And if you missed out on getting that first issue of the Cull, when issue 2 comes out this Wednesday, there's a second printing for issue 1 in comic shops the same day, so you can pick that up as well. Yeah, so that's good for this episode, everybody. We appreciate the support as always, and we will talk to you next time.
Catch you later, and don't forget to check out Jace's interview with Jeremy Adams. See you later.